I don't think that's for me. Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to you all to the CTAC virtual meeting on June 3rd, 2020. Thank you all for being here. Your attendance is very much appreciated. I sincerely hope, trust, and pray that you and all of your loved ones are all weathering and navigating your way through our nation's multiple crises. And you're doing so very safely, very healthy, and very successfully. I will now gavel this June 3rd virtual CTAC meeting started. So tonight we have Mr. Ivan Jimenez, who will manage and control the IT aspects of the CTAC virtual meeting. And Ivan will now display the rules of engagement for this meeting for your reading, understanding, and for maintaining order during this meeting. So please go ahead, Ivan, with the rules of engagement. Please, I'm going to give you all a minute to review the rules of engagement. I'd like to emphasize that this is a public meeting in accordance with Florida's Sunshine Law. So it is being recorded, and not only is it being recorded, but it will be uploaded and displayed on YouTube for the whole world to see. If you have difficulties with your audio visual during the meeting, please call Ivan directly. You have his number if you want to make a note of that, or his email. Public participation has been publicized by the coordinator, and particularly I'd like to bring your attention to the committee members' communication, and committee members who wish to provide a question or comment need to unmute their microphone. You all know how to do that. Just click on that green button off to the right and state your name and get my attention. And after you, I'm hearing some feedback again. And after you've gotten my attention, I will recognize you and you could say your piece. And I would respectfully request that after you complete your question or comment, that you yield back to me by saying thank you, or I yield back so I know that you're giving control back to me. I would appreciate that. It will allow us to efficiently conduct this meeting. Okay, so I presume the rest of the items on the committee members, you can read that. I've emphasized those points that are necessary for us to have a very efficient meeting. So with that said, thank you, Ivan, for that. And I will now ask our coordinator, Mr. Chance, to please confirm quorum for the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this point in time, I'd like everybody to continue to have, well, I guess you have to open up the microphone at this point in time, and I'll call your name. But before I do that, I just want to emphasize again that the chair cannot see everyone. So is it very important that you do say through the chair, state your name, and say that you have a comment. After that, the chair will recognize you and say, either he'll write your name down and say, I'll come back to you in a certain order. But it's very important that the chair cannot see everyone. So it's very important that you just say through the chair, state your name, and the chair will recognize you. Also, when we have presentations, please write down any questions that you may have during the presentation. After the presentation is over, then the chair will open it up for Q&A. At this point in time, Chair, I will call the roll. Alexander Adams. Maya Child. You gotta unmute yourself. I see you. Ivan, can you unmute everybody? What, the panelists? I'm gonna start again. Alexander Adams. Maya Child.
Here.
Alan Fishman.
Present.
Susan Gouache.
Present.
Benjamin Johnson.
Benjamin Hedrick.
Yeah, I'm here, present.
Marlon Kelly Sr.,
Here.
Antonio Reyes. Antonio Reyes. Susan Shine. Susan Shine. Lee Swarland. Lee Swarland. Naomi Wright.
Present.
Vice Chair Daniel Iglesias.
Present.
You skipped Jasmine.
Shit.
I was going to
Jasmine
take care of
Johnson.
that.
Jasmine Johnson.
Here, present.
Thank you. Chair Dr. Claudius Carnegie.
Present.
Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Coordinator. And thank you all for being here again. I look forward to an orderly, effective, efficient CTAC meeting, and I want to really thank you in advance for your kind contributions, participation, understanding, and cooperation during this meeting. So I'll move on to the next item. I would now respectfully like to invite a motion and a seconder for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Anyone?
This is Naomi. So moved.
Naomi moves. Ms. Wright moves. Who seconds? I'm going to pick on Maricha. You second, right, Maricha?
Second.
All right. Thank you. So, Mr. Coordinator, do you have the record straight for the mover and the seconder?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Any opposition to the approval of the agenda? Please say nay. Hearing none. I think we have unanimous approval for the agenda, Mr. Coordinator.
Yes, we do.
Okay, Mr. Coordinator. All right. I would now like to respectfully invite a motion and a seconder for the approval of the CTAC May 6, 2020 meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Move it. I'm sorry?
I'll
Who's the
second.
mover?
This is Jasmine.
Jasmine second, but who's the mover?
Oh, okay. I thought you, sorry.
I move.
Marlon
Kelly.
Kelly.
Okay. Mr. Kelly moves, Ms. Johnson second. Any opposition to the approval of those minutes? Hearing none, we have that unanimous. Again, Mr. Coordinator, do you have the record straight?
Yes, I do, Chair. Thank you very much.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next item, which is CTAC membership update. Anything for us, Mr. Coordinator?
Not at this time, Chair.
All right. So thank you, Mr. Coordinator. We'll move on to the next item. Are there any public comments? I guess Ivan needs to open up the microphone for the public. Ivan?
Yes, all microphones will be open right now for the attendees. If you have a public comment, feel free to submit your comment and state your name.
Do you have the raise your hand option for them, Mr. Ivan?
I do, and I do not see any raised hand.
Okay.
It's an emergency. I'm at a meeting and the phone.
Who's that?
That's Norman.
Oh, okay. He can't raise his hand. He's on the phone. Okay. You're recognized, Mr. Wortman, for public comment.
For the time being.
I believe he's on another call.
He's on another call, Chair.
Oh, I thought I heard his voice. All right, so there are no public comments then, so we'll move on. All right, thank you, Mr. Ivan. Please mute all those mics so we don't get any interference while I move on to the next item. And It's item 7. And item 7 is an informational item. And this informational item is being brought to us at the request of 2 members of our board, Ms. Wright and Ms. Shine. So this being an informational item, it does not require any CTAC resolution. So Mr. Fishman can relax for the moment, because I will be calling up on him for any resolution matters. So with that said, I'm going to introduce the item. It's Florida Department of Transportation District 6 Community Traffic Safety Team Program. And the presenter today is Mr. Carlos Sarmiento from FDOT District 6. And Mr. Sarmiento, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank Dr. Carnegie, Paul Chance from TPO, and the CTAC committee for your invitation. I hope that my presentation will be informational and educational, and always happy to help and answer any questions. With that, again, my name is Carlos Sarmiento. I'm with the Florida Department of Transportation District 6, which covers Miami-Dade and Monroe counties. And I'm here to present to you some information on the Community Traffic Safety Team, CTST program, and as well as to highlight some of our safety campaigns that we do within the district. With that, next slide, please. So the challenge that we have here, not only in our state, but definitely in our local communities, is how can we bring traffic safety to the communities? Next slide. We do that through the CTST, the Community Traffic Safety Team program. And our mission is to approach it with the 4E approach. Many of you have heard it before: engineering, education, enforcement, and emergency services. Next. So when we develop a community traffic safety team, we try to incorporate all 4 E's whenever possible. If we break it down even further, you can see in the bullet points here is that we try to include our law enforcement, whether it's state troopers, county police, municipal police agencies. Obviously, are very, very big on engineering, so DOT is involved, Miami-Dade County Public Works, and municipal public works as well. Certainly, the TPO is a big contributor to our team. Traffic safety organizations, including nonprofits like AAA and AARP, are also part of our extensive outreach. School representation, we have teams with Miami-Dade County Public Schools and Monroe County Public Schools. We also have partnerships with our local colleges and universities in our district. Community leadership is important because we have a lot of safety advocates that come to us with any concerns, requests, and we take it seriously and we bring it back and address them accordingly. Medical trauma representation, we do work a lot with all the hospitals in the area and with clinical research, anything that's related to traffic safety and how we can improve safety in general. Same thing with our emergency services. We work a lot with fire rescue, both at the county level and the municipal level. And believe it or not, media is a big component of our program. A lot of the things that we do through the CTST program garner really good earned media opportunity. A lot of them have come and covered a lot of the events that we do individually with a specific team or collectively with our safety campaigns that we do at large. And then, of course, motivated citizens. Opportunities like this through the CTAC gives us an opportunity to get feedback from the community. Where can we improve? What services and programs do you need in your area? And we can certainly address those as they come. Next, please. Some of the things that we do on a state and local level are a lot of outreach events, including multi-agency operational and educational details, where we work through the mutual aid agreement to address law enforcement campaigns and programs. We support multi-agency DUI checkpoints, as well as saturation points and wolf packs. We've supported local hospitals and fire departments with their car seat checkpoints. CarFit also is a new program that we've supported through the Safe Mobility for Life Coalition. CarFit is a program where we address the aging in place driver as they're considering not driving. We have resources for them to consider and also programs that they can tap into as they are slowly phasing out from driving. Certainly, bike and pedestrian safety is a big concern here in South Florida. So we do approach them through safety campaigns and bike rodeos and traffic safety fairs. And Safe Route to School is another program that we have to encourage kids to safely walk or bike to school, as well as offering infrastructure funding to improve the safety components of walking to and biking to school. Next, please. Just to highlight, we will be covering a few of our high-end traffic safety campaigns that we've done here in our district and also on a state level. Put It Down is our distracted driving awareness campaign. Alert Today, Alive Tomorrow covers bicycle and pedestrian safety. Drive Safe is our aggressive driving awareness campaign. Many of you already heard of Click It or Ticket for our seatbelt compliance. And again, CarFit, which is a program of our Safe Mobility for Life Coalition for the elderly. Next, please. Drive Safe is our aggressive driving awareness campaign. It originated because of the high incidents happening on Chrome Avenue a few years back. And the DOT decided to expand that campaign into a district-wide. So we've been implementing Drive Safe for a few years now, both in Miami-Dade and Monroe County. And the purpose of this campaign is to educate the public of the dangers of aggressive driving, which includes many habits, including speeding, following closely, failure to use your signal when changing lanes, and other similar behaviors. Next, please. With every campaign that we do, we have a complete approach to it. It's not just pushing the messages, but we also create a whole plethora of campaign materials, including tip cards, posters, and very heavily on social media. We're always trying to create something that's catchy, that's easy, that's understandable, and that could be easily applicable through our partnerships and be shared at large. Here's just some examples of the collateral materials that we have for Drive Safe. And just so you know, every material that we produce on the DOT for our campaigns are produced in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. Next, please. Just to give you some reporting by the numbers, at the end of every campaign, we tabulate what we've done. Here's a glimpse of our Drive Safe campaign since it started in 2016 and all the way to last year. We've expanded on our campaign partnerships. We've continued to have great outreach events pertaining to that. We've incorporated multi-agency operations to support the Drive Safe campaign. And we're happy to report that our overall campaign impressions, meaning eyes that viewed our messaging, have been pretty high for a campaign that started in our district. Next, please. In addition to Drive Safe, we dedicate the month of May to Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month through a micro campaign called Ride Smart. We provide information both on social media and also some outreach events pertaining to motorcycle safety, both from the motorcycle driver perspective and also from the others that are seeing motorcyclists on our roadways. Here are just some examples of our collateral materials that we've used. Next, please. I'd like to share also a little more of a glimpse of what we've done with both Drive Safe, the motorcycle event, and leading up to another campaign. Last year, we had a very successful outreach event that we did on May 16th at the University of Miami Rasmus campus on Key Biscayne, where we did 3 types of events in one. We had a press conference headed by myself and David Henderson from the TPO, where we addressed the importance of motorcycle safety and bicycle and pedestrian safety. Immediately after the press conference, we also had an law enforcement operation throughout Key Biscayne, targeting speeders, those that are not respecting bicycle riders and also pedestrians. And then we concluded it on campus with having a big safety fair. I believe we had over 20 campaign partners involved, giving away educational materials and promotional items, and it was positively covered by the media. Next, please. Which leads to another campaign, the Alert Today, Alive Tomorrow bicycle and pedestrian campaign, started as a statewide initiative through FDOT in Tallahassee. We in turn in our district took it and branded it as a full-fledged campaign to be done on a yearly basis. Obviously, the purpose of Alert Today, Alive Tomorrow is to address bigger issues here in South Florida, like jaywalking or drivers not yielding to pedestrians or bicyclists whenever they're making a left or right-hand turn, and also improving and educating our bicyclists to obey the laws of the road. Next, please. Again, some of our samples of our campaign materials. We've created some really good tip cards, both from the driver's perspective and the pedestrian and bicyclist perspective. We've used not only printed materials, but we've used them on social media. Next, please. This is from our last year campaign for Alert Today, Alive Tomorrow. Was our first launch as a fully branded campaign. We had 62 go back, there we go. 62 partners, 10 outreach events, and 2 multi-agency enforcement operations, and it yielded 10 million impressions. Next, please. And then finally, we have what I call our flagship campaign. Probably the longest running campaign we've had in our district has been the Put It Down, Distracted Driving Awareness campaign. Obviously, as it says, put it down means to put down the phone or any device that distracts you from driving. We do want to emphasize that the Put It Down does have a big emphasis on texting. However, we do educate the public on other types of distraction while you're driving. Next, please. And with that, I'd like to share a quick video of our campaign that we did this 2019-2020. For some reason, we can't hear the audio, but you can see the images. I'll just narrate over them. We did have a campaign launch outside Florida Highway Patrol, where we had over 13 agencies participate. We had a press conference to kick it off, as well as an internal presentation to all law enforcement agencies. It was covered by the media, and it was immediately followed by a multi-agency operation throughout the county for a few hours that day. Again, this was launching the Put It Down campaign, and at the same time, it was educating everyone of the new primary law that the state of Florida has, which the primary law now states that it's illegal to text and drive in the state of Florida, and it's also illegal to have any type of device in your hand while you're driving through a construction or school zone. So we took advantage of that opportunity to have that press conference to announce that new primary law, and also support it with a multi-agency operation, and then also educate the public. As you can see, we had 14 participants, 700 materials were handed out, And that, in the 2-hour span, yielded 41 citations for violating that primary law. And again, it shows the great things that we can do through our campaigns, through our partners. Next slide, please. Again, we highlighted the new Florida state law. I just mentioned it. It's a primary offense. So here's some verbiage that we used throughout the campaign on social media, and also talking to the media. We handed this blurb here. Next, please. Some samples of our collateral that we've used. Here are the tip cards. As you can see, it even states what the offenses are and the citation amount per offense. So it's, everybody's being educated on what it costs. And believe me, it's not only the $30 for the first offense, but it's also, you add to that the court cost. So it's actually a higher fee if you do get pulled over and cited for that. And then you can see other social media postings there, because our campaigns usually run anywhere from 1 to 3 months. So it gives us time to really get out there in the community and get the message effectively across. Put It Down is no different. Put It Down usually runs a solid 3-month campaign run. So we do cover everything from early October through January, including the holidays. Next, please. Here is a public service announcement video that we made. I'm not sure the audio will work, but basically with every campaign that we do, we include a public service announcement video. We definitely believe that, actions speak louder than words. And these type of PSAs have been very effectively used with our partners. I'd like to say that with our contracts that we have for every campaign, we've used them, for instance, on the freebie mobile carts. We've also used these at gas station TVs. Whenever you're at the pump, you can watch these as you're putting gasoline. We've used this with National Cinema Media. Whenever you go to the movie theaters, right before the show starts, you'll see some of these PSAs. And also we've had some luck with our network TV channels, both domestic and international. Actually, our campaigns have reached beyond our local level. They've reached statewide, national, and international levels. Again, these PSAs, we have them in English and in Spanish. Here's a put it down by the numbers. As you can see, this is our longest campaign that we've had since 2011. It started humbly and small. And if you fast forward to 2019, we have pretty much an unprecedented record year with 160 partners, 157 outreach events, and an unprecedented 353.3 million impressions. And that's a combination of both what we do with social media, the views that our PSA had, but it's all large in part from our safety partners that we've had. They really has helped us put out our messaging way out there. So, we have a lot of thanks to our partners, and we're always looking for new ways to expand our messaging. Next, please. Here's a couple of snapshots of the annual University of Miami Safety Fair. I wanted to emphasize again on law enforcement, because law enforcement has really been the driving force in upholding the law with a lot of the new laws that we've had, and then also to really help us educate the public on a lot of the behaviors that we see on the roadway. University of Miami has been one of our strongest partners for over 10 years. We've done a back-to-school safety fair on our Coral Gables campus. I know Paul has been with me from the very beginning. And it's a great opportunity to educate the student, faculty, and staff. And also we've had some good media turnout, as well as law enforcement participation. Next, please. And with that, I conclude the presentation. I do want to mention that the CTST program is constantly being revamped. We're always trying to incorporate new members, both on the municipal, county, and individual and groups. We welcome anyone, and we certainly, I'm here to help you and are committed to bring safety to the community. My contact is listed down there. You can email me or call me. Be more than happy to work with you. And if you have any ideas for our campaigns or for our safety programs, I'm all ears. And with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Through the chair, Paul Chance. I just wanted to acknowledge that we had a couple of CTAC members here that are present. Antonio Reyes, he's present. Susan Shine is present. Lee Swarland is also present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coordinator. I noticed that. I was going to bring that to your attention as well. So I'm glad you're on top of that, and thank you. All right. Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Carlos Sarmiento. Excellent presentation. Sorry some of those audio and videos didn't work, but you know, with technology, it's touch and go sometimes. I'm sure we have some questions because there were 2 members of our board that requested your presentation. So I'm sure they have some questions. Let's start off with Naomi. No questions, Naomi? Naomi, you're recognized.
You gotta unmute
You need to
yourself.
unmute.
You gotta unmute.
Okay. All right. I was trying to unmute myself. To be perfectly honest, I don't remember why I requested this. Maybe Stephen does. I can't remember. There was something that prompted it, but I don't remember exactly what prompted it. Do you remember, Paul?
Yeah, through the chair. There was some dialogue about how there was some safety issues going on with traffic and driving and people driving, and there was some questions of how are there any campaigns that are trying to help people and demonstrate any campaigns about driving safety, and how are they working with law enforcement? How are they enforcing these campaigns? And that's why we have brought up FDOT and the things that they're doing in their department, and how law enforcement and the campaigns are working side by side together.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Now I do have to question though, because all of these campaigns that you mentioned, with the exception of maybe Click It or Ticket, if you are not directly involved with transportation or roadways or you know, transportation issues, how do you see these? I've not seen any of these.
Really?
No, I've not seen any of them. I mean, are you? Where are they?
Okay. Well,
aside from the meetings that you cited.
Well, first of all, we try to approach it in many ways. We try, you know, we do have a budget for advertising. It's not a big budget.
Through the chair, I'm sorry, Carlos. Some of the members are asking if you could speak up a little bit, then they have a little difficult time hearing you.
Hearing who, me
Okay.
or Carlos?
No, Carlos. They're having difficulty hearing Carlos.
Oh, okay. I'll speak up. So we have limited budget for advertising. As mentioned, we try to put our messaging through paid advertising like movie theaters, gas station TVs, the freebies, and also if we have extra budget, we put them on radio or TV as well. At the same time, we solicit the help of our municipal and county agencies to post our messaging on social media. And then we complement that, whether it's through a law enforcement operation and or going to the community whenever there's events. We try to tackle as many events as possible. If we can't be there ourselves, we always provide materials for any organization, whether it's private and nonprofit. We provide them the materials whenever they're doing their own events as well. But if there's something that you feel that we're maybe missing, like I said, I'm all ears. I'm certainly happy to work with you and your community. And perhaps there might be an organization that we haven't even looked at that might be beneficial for us.
I don't know of any specific organization right off the top, but I'm thinking in particular right now about the ones for the elderly or seniors who want to maybe limit or relinquish driving.
Okay.
Where are you promoting those? Are you going to senior facilities? What? Because they're not
Right.
on social media.
Right,
Yeah, a lot of these-
yeah, we are going to expand on that. The Save Mobility for Life Coalition has been updating their materials. You may have seen them, not right now, but you will be seeing more of that in the months to come. We've updated that. We've created new materials for both English and Spanish speaking communities. We've done some CARFIT events. Usually CARFIT is done either in the spring or in the fall because it's really hard to do a CARFIT during the summer months. So it's cyclical too. We've probably done more work directly with the city of Miami, with some of their senior centers in the north side. And also we've done a lot with Cutler Bay and with Pinecrest in their senior citizens as well. But that's a program that I personally, I'm trying to expand. Again, that's my one-man show, so we're definitely trying to expand that.
All right, well, let's move it north. Let's move
All right,
it north.
just before I get to you, Mary Shelley, I just
Susan
want.
is-
Are you finished, Naomi?
I'm finished.
Okay. Mary Shelley, I'm gonna come to you in a minute, but I just need to deal with a couple of piggybacks off of Naomi here. You say that your campaigns are conducted in English and Spanish. What about Asian?
Yes, we do include Haitian Creole in our printed materials and the majority of our social media postings as well.
Okay, and this is primarily to piggyback on Naomi. This is why I'm holding you off there, Mary Shelley. So your educational and enforcement program, I'm wondering how well those are synchronized, because I still see a lot of distraction out there that are not being enforced. I still see a lot of trucks driving in left lanes on the highways and the turnpikes, and they're not being enforced. So are you not consistently enforcing these violations?
Well, first of all, the DOT is not a law enforcement entity. We can only ask our law enforcement agencies to support and help on that. Now, they are willing to do. How are we doing that? Well, I try to do the legwork for them by uniting them through a campaign. It's much easier for a law enforcement agency to fulfill that duty through a campaign and through the help of other agencies through what they call the mutual aid agreement. The mutual aid agreement is a contract that allows law enforcement agencies to do enforcement in other jurisdictions. And because something as big as distracted driving is there's so many people doing it, it requires a lot of officers on the road to do that. So from the DOT standpoint, we do that through campaign season. So, and we encourage all the law enforcement agencies to continue doing the enforcement and education even outside the campaign season. So we still provide them with the education and the materials, and if they want to continue it outside the campaign season, the CTST program comes into play, where I've personally united several cities to work details, evenings or holidays, to approach whatever behavior is being questioned. So there is life after the campaigns. It's just really up to the high, the command of any law enforcement agency to want to continue to do that.
So I would assume, in fact, just based on my own observations, that the accident statistics for cell phone distractions and all of that must be very high. Correct me if I'm wrong. So if my assumptions and opinions are correct, shouldn't that drive some more enforcement, which you're agreeing with me is lacking?
Well, yes. First of all, the law enforcement stats have not come back to us yet, because now the law changed last year as a primary, and it usually takes a good year whenever there's a new law into effect to get those new stats in. But we're hoping that we'll see a decrease, hopefully. But I think it's a little too early to tell. The other thing about addressing the manpower issue is really up to the law enforcement agencies of what their priorities are in their jurisdiction, in their municipalities, or at large, whether it's FHP, state troopers, or Miami-Dade County Police. All we can do is, harness their partnership, particularly during campaign season. And when there isn't a campaign, we can, I try to do my best through the CTST program to maintain momentum. But remember, ultimately, DOT is not a law enforcement entity. We support them and we encourage them. In fact, we even try to give them incentives by, we have a thing called the Law Enforcement Liaison Program, which is similar to the Community Traffic Safety Program. And all this coordinator does is work with the law enforcement agencies in our district, providing them education opportunities, providing them grant opportunities to do specialized selective enforcement, like bike and pedestrian, like impaired driving, seatbelt, even distracted. So there are some incentives that come with that, but it's really up to the administration of each law enforcement agency to sign off on that and want to do that.
All right, I hear you. All right, well, thank you for answering my questions. Marichelle, I don't see anybody else but you, Marichelle. If there's anyone else, please get my attention. But Marichelle, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Carlos. And I just wanted to, I was going to ask you about the effectiveness, and you answered that just now. You don't know. I have the inkling that these kinds of campaigns require more than one person, because the need is very, very great for safety. Yeah. But one thing that I think could be effective, like when I drive, I have a 3-foot. I have 2 stickers. One, I put the put it down. The hand. I have a sticker in my bumper. And also I have a 3-foot, share the road sticker. So that becomes like, my thinking is if you be sure, like law enforcement and anybody who can, is willing to put the stickers in their cars, and you have like roving PSAs no matter, where you go. And then the other thing is, this is, communities like mine in South Miami were 3 square miles, as we're doing things. Just yesterday, the commission voted to enact on the neighborhood greenway. So we're encouraging everybody of all ages to get out in the streets and bike and walk. So getting the word out to drive safely is going to be super, super important. And so I am wondering, the Safe Mobility for Life, whether we could do like a big campaign in our city for that. What do you recommend? I mean, would that be possible? And what kinds of things would we actually do to make that an ongoing campaign in our city?
Sure. I think the answer is really long, but I would first recommend that you and I offline very soon get together and discuss that, because there is definitely something we can do. And you remember when you were part of the South Miami CTST, which now converts into the Southeast CTST, we've done some things, but there is something that can be done, not only through Safe Mobility for Life, but I think certainly through Alert Today, Alive Tomorrow, as it pertains to bicycle and pedestrian safety. I do want to mention that right now, as of today, the DOT, because of what's going on with COVID-19 and our directive from Tallahassee, we are not we've been told to put our safety campaigns on hold until further notice. However, I am personally pushing for it to come back, for us to really start doing things, because even though there's COVID-19 going on, there is a significant increase of bike and pedestrian activity because people are going out and walking more than ever.
Yes.
So keep in mind, you know, I am a DOT person, but I'm also part of the general consensus. So it's my job to kind of be your voice and bring what's going on back to the DOT. And, you know, I hear you loud and clear, and I'm trying to make that case that we can get back to what we do as soon as possible. But as of now, we've been told to hold off on safety campaigns and social media messaging, which maybe Ms. Wright, you haven't seen things from us lately because we've been told to not say anything right now.
I was just about to comment on that. I was
Yes.
just about to comment on that.
So believe me, I'm aching to be out there, to be amongst everyone in the community and do what I do best, which is really work with the community. But I am making that case, and the moment we are allowed, then you will see newer things. But
I should give me someone I should need to write a letter, because I think it's the opposite. You know, like this now is a time when people are driving faster, that people need to like be aware that there are more people out there trying to bike and walk in our streets. You know, so
Right.
You know, let's connect on that. This is like the time to.
You guys can do that offline.
Yeah.
Through the chair, we do have Marlon Kelly who would like to say something, and also Alan Fishman who would like to say something as well.
Okay, so, all right, are you finished, Maricel?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Fishman.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to say something when you get a chance. This is Lee. I'd like to say something when you get a minute.
Okay, so we're going to go with Kelly, Fishman, and then Swerdlin, all right?
And I think Naomi.
And Dan Iglesias, I'm trying to get on too.
Well, Naomi, you're coming after this, these four people.
That's fine. I can wait till the end.
Okay, Swerdlin. Okay, and then Naomi. Go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
Okay. Carlos, that was a good presentation, and I appreciate, like Naomi, I haven't seen any of the campaigns, but in your presentation, they look real informative, educational. And so I would like to ask probably two things. One, since you've been doing this from 2016, do you have any empirical numbers or any idea if the impact of these campaigns has made a difference over the years compared to when you first started and probably now? Was there a reduction in accidents or increase with people abiding by some of the traffic rules? That's one question. Has there been an impact, you believe?
Right. What we did see initially when the campaign first started with Chrome Avenue, after we tackled that specific corridor, we saw a significant reduction. And at the same time, it was not just because of the educational and enforcement aspect of it, but it also yielded an engineering improvement. So with engineering improvement, there's also, you know, a reduction associated to that. But in the other years of the campaign, I would have to probably look at statistical crash reports within certain areas that we saw some activity. Some of them have gone down, some of them have remained the same, and we know that there are new locations that have now bigger impacts. So we're trying to look at that collectively, both from an engineering standpoint. Are engineering improvements warranted? Because sometimes they're not. Most of the time it's really human behavior that's the issue, and that's where law enforcement comes in through education, but definitely ultimately becomes an enforcement issue because you can't fix the road any better and people are still making the wrong decisions. Right. So it's a little bit of everything.
Okay, I think it's important to have some type of review of the impact and see if people are abiding by some of these campaigns. Now, you mentioned education, and this is just a suggestion that I would offer. I don't know how realistic it is, but here it goes. In high school, they required every student to have some type of community service hours before graduation. And I'm thinking if we could make this a part of an educational aspect for every student has to sign off an hour of reviewing these type of safety rules in terms of the driving, in terms of understanding, pedestrians right away and all that stuff, and have that be part of a portion of their educational requirement. Because I believe it's not just young people that's doing the crash. I'm not saying that, but we have to start somewhere. We have to make it mandatory that someone within our society who's going to be, using the road, probably more frequently than others, that is informed. As much as all the information that you have, I think it just go to waste if we don't make it kind of mandatory. Now, is that a possibility to use your platform to integrate into the high school on a mandatory level?
Well, I appreciate it. I really believe it's actually a great idea. We haven't really approached it that way, but I will tell you that we do have a Miami-Dade County Public Schools community traffic safety team that meets once a month. And we've always dedicated the month of October, we dedicate a week called Teen Driver Safety Week. And what we do is the DOT and our safety partners with Miami-Dade Public Schools, we provide them these type of educational materials, videos, and usually they host one event hosted by the school board chair that brings media and the superintendent speaks. We have usually guest speakers, whether victim advocates or survivors, where they talk about a lot of these traffic safety, whether it's impaired driving. And sometimes we even repeat that event in the spring right before prom or graduation. But I definitely will take that idea to the traffic safety team and see if that could be implemented as a requirement. Again, it will probably have to go through the school board and that kind of thing, but I think planting that seed within the traffic safety team, we could probably get consensus. But I'll definitely bring that into play. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, you've finished, Mr. Kelly?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Fishman.
Hi, good evening. I have two questions, and hopefully I didn't miss the answers previously. Under the current law, which you spent a lot of time showing the new law, if you are stopped at a red light or at a stop sign, are you then allowed to pick up your wireless telephone and use it while the light is red or you're at the stop sign and not moving?
You are allowed, as long as you're not moving the vehicle, correct.
Okay, so that law that was the old law, so that aspect is the same. Okay, thank you. Yes. So then the second point, I don't know how to characterize this. It's let's call it education, but it's coincidentally not that long ago. I spent a lot of time and energy actually speaking with Kevin Walford from CTAC, who actually, after he spent a lot of time and energy, didn't come up with an exact answer other than there was no answer. And to me, this is a gaping hole, considering what I'm about to tell everyone happened not only to me, but then happened to another person pretty much within the same week. And since I don't drive that much, I have to imagine this happens far more often than we realize. In both of our cases, but let's just talk about, her case was the same as, hers was on Miami Beach, mine was in Coral Gables. In my particular case, I was driving down a street, not a little tiny street, not a big street, but a street that holds a metro bus, a street that has cars, and a street that has bikes and pedestrians. It's a one way and one way the other way. So I guess it's a 2-lane highway. So I'm on the phone I'm on the phone. I was on wireless. So I wasn't holding the phone. So I was in compliance with the law. I'm driving very slowly because I'm actually looking for a parking space. So let's say I was going 10 miles, 15 miles an hour. And I have a Tesla, which is very important because my car makes no noise because I don't have an engine. So I'm driving on the street looking for a spot, and then all of a sudden, right in front of me, there are 3 bicycles taking, like in a triangle shape, taking up the entire lane, moving less than 1 mile an hour. If they moved any slower, I swear they would fall over from lack of movement. Because I guess they thought they were on a country dirt road on a Sunday and there was no cars on the street. And unfortunately, there was no way to go around them because there was a moving vehicle blocking that way. So what I did is I tapped the horn. I didn't lay on the horn. I didn't do a 10-minute beep. I just like a quick millisecond tap to let them know, not only because I have a Tesla, you don't even know that you're behind me. And after waiting like 15 seconds or more, then they didn't even look to see I was behind them. So I figured they didn't realize there was a car just sitting there waiting for them to do nothing. So I tapped on my horn as a tap, and they actually saw me and they moved out of the way. The problem is, when I went to park, the 3 bicyclists came over and started accosting me and verbally attacking me and begging on my car in the middle of COVID, which really frightened me, quite honestly, and telling me that I don't know what the law is and they have the right to take up the lane. There wasn't a Shero on this road. In my friend's case, there was a Shero, but this lane did not have a Shero and it did have a sidewalk. And at the end of the day, after looking into it and having Kevin Walford look into it, we found that there is no law on this fact, that it's whether there's a Shero there, which really, according to him, only means that if the bike's right in the Shero, they won't get hit by a car door. That's pretty much what that means. All lanes are shared, whether there's a Shero or not, he said, and everyone has to share the road equally. But and there's no law that says a bicyclist cannot ride at 1 mile an hour tying up traffic. And I know if I was Naomi, I probably would have run them over, but I did, tap them on the phone briefly, and they did get out of the way, but then they attacked me. And then they did the same thing with my friend, who's an older woman, who's the sweetest person in the world. All she did was tap the horn, and then they started screaming at her and using expletives and whatever else as I got out of her way. So I really think the state, because Kevin is saying there's no law, there's no rules, it could be deemed, he actually said, as being aggressive because I tapped on the horn. So instead, it would be expected for me to just stay behind these people for as long as it would take them to get, for minutes, for them to get to a point where possibly I can get around them, but then there was an intersection. You really can't pass people on an intersection. So you, as the state and into education, I really think, this is a very serious defect because the bicyclists seem to think they have the right to do what they wanted to. I, as a car, felt I had the right to go more than 1 mile an hour. And, normally I would, if it was another car, I would tap on the horn just for another car as well. So I don't know what the answer is, but I would like an answer. And I'd like to know what the state can do to educate the bicyclists and the motorists, because here I'm on CTAC for 10 years or more. Kevin Walford's in charge of BPAC, and we couldn't get, I don't believe we got a good answer for the problem.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry you experienced that, and I'm sorry you couldn't get a direct answer. I don't think there is a clear answer to that because there's too many variables going on. And it's something that we are aware of, and it's a constant challenge for us to find a way to educate both the bicyclist and the driver at the same time. From a bicyclist standpoint, I could see why honking the horn might be considered an aggressive driving behavior, and as a matter of fact, it can be. But at the same time, I put myself in your shoes, and I understand they're hogging the lane and they're probably not obeying the rules. And we've seen a lot of bicyclists. Again, I'm not saying all bicyclists are the same. Some do obey the rules and follow the roadway rules, and some don't. Some blow over the red lights and the stop signs and all of that. Again, this is where law enforcement comes in. We as a state agency, as an engineering state agency, cannot enforce the law. We can only uphold it by working with our partners. But that's something that our bike and pedestrian campaign is constantly looking over, trying to find new ways to communicate that issue. So, we've heard cases like that before, and it's something that we're trying to figure out how to best address it. But in the end, it helps when we have law enforcement on our side to witness that and to really, and it's not only to enforce it, but we also have to educate our law enforcement agencies what those rules and regulations are, so they know what to enforce. So.
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but and I'm not being argumentative, but it's I don't know that it's a good answer because the streets are there for transporting people. If you're on a bicycle doing the best you can to get from point A to point B, and then someone just goes and lays on the horn for 3 minutes, okay, that's very aggressive and that's probably very wrong. But if you have 3 people making a triangle, taking up the whole lane, going 1 mile an hour, instead of being in a park or on the sidewalk or in a country road, you know, and they're tying up traffic, and even if you give them a courteous of waiting, and you're just tapping the horn to let them know, like, hello, you're not by yourself, you're sharing the road. Instead, they feel they own the road and they can do whatever they want to. And so, and the cars have to, it's, you know, they weren't in a crosswalk where they have a right of way. So I really think it's, you know, and the fact that you're saying, you know, there's a problem, I imagine there is a big problem, because I don't drive very much. I usually am actually on a bicycle, and I usually ride on the side of the street closest to the curb to not get in the way of a car, which is why I guess I'm still alive. But I think, you know, something needs to be done on this, because if it's happening to me and another person in the same week, I'm sure it's happening a lot more. And obviously people just don't really know the rules, because there are no rules. So rules need to be made, I think.
Well, just to add to that, sir, you know, perhaps you're right. Perhaps new rules need to be made, but we can't make those rules. The DOT only upholds current laws. That's why we can't lobby for any particular cause or rule. That has to go through legislation, and the best thing you can do is, you know, talk to your elected official and present your case so they can bring that up. But we as a state agency cannot impose new rules unless they're already passed.
Through the chair, may I interject on this topic before my term?
Well, why don't you take it and deal with both for efficiency, because we're on this item for almost 50 minutes.
Okay, I think what I'm hearing from Mr. Fishman is something that I have witnessed. I'm not a bicyclist, but bicyclists have been made to believe that they do own the road. That's number one. Following that, they have not been given common courtesy type structure. And what I'm hearing is there is no common courtesy here, because they think they do own the road, and they can sit up there and just spit expletives and everything else at you because they feel like they can do this. So I think it's a matter of manners and courtesy is what I'm saying that need to be implemented here. Okay, now with my other, since the chair gave me this opportunity, I wanted to ask about the social media messages, especially with the pandemic, et cetera, and so many people are inside, they're using social media more. I don't understand why social media has been cut out. My question is, in addition to postings, I'm not talking about postings, is there a way for you to implement static messages, just like we have all these other commercial type messages that are just there and they pop up and they stay there? Can't you implement some of those on social media so that they are constantly there, and not just when, for example, when Paul and, you know, public outreach posts things? I'm not talking about that. That should be in addition to the static messages.
When you mean static, do you mean like billboard advertising, that kind of thing, or? I don't.
Pretty much, they're like advertisements. They're just there.
But like on the street, on the road, something more visible like that?
I'm talking about on social media, like on Instagram and Facebook and
right.
Yeah.
I understand you now. Okay.
Yeah, just like they have advertisements that pop up and are just there that you can't really get rid of. That should be implemented as far as your messages are concerned. And that was it. The other thing is I just wanted to second Marlene Kelly's suggestion of implementing it in the schools.
Okay, thank you.
I thought that was an excellent idea.
Yeah, it is, and I will take it to the school CTST. But again, I want to mention that right now the reason you're not seeing anything is because we're following a directive from FDOT central office in Tallahassee. Our safety office.
I understand that. I think they think we have bigger fish to fry, which we really do right now. But I'm just saying the mentality should be not just to have postings, to have those messages there when you can, when you are able to do it again.
Oh, absolutely, we will for sure, and we're also trying to find ways to sustain those postings whenever we can. Remember, we work this through campaigns, and each campaign has a set budget that's approved by our communications office and in part by Tallahassee as well. We only have enough that we can fulfill, whether it is paid advertising through, TV, radio, movie theaters, gas station. But then this is where the importance of safety partners come in. They can help us, and they have helped us disseminate our safety messages. We work really close. The TPO has done an amazing job in putting our materials out there and sharing it at large. The county has the same. The cities have done so too. And as an individual, you're welcome to even go and use our messaging and post them yourself. But we are aware that, and I agree with you. I come from a media background myself, and I believe in that. I believe in mass media, especially when the messaging is so important and needed in our communities. But we are going to resume that as soon as we're allowed.
Does social media not have an avenue for PSAs, public service announcements?
Certainly, and we have.
But you don't have to pay for.
No, but well, nowadays, TV stations, they no longer run it for free.
I know.
They used to, and even if you pull favors, they'll put them in the wee hours of the morning, which nobody will see. So, but if you pay, they will play. So we're also trying to figure out ways to get adequate budget for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We're excessively over time on this item, so I'm going to deal with Mr. Swerdlin, and we've got to end this.
We got through the chair. We also have Danny Iglesias.
All right, let's deal with Mr. Swerdlin first, and then Mr. Iglesias, and that'll be it because we're approaching an hour on this item. Go ahead, Mr. Swerdlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one note to make about this. As I came in late, I came in right at the point where you were discussing the use of handheld devices in a vehicle. And I've been driving for over 60 years, and I find what has been done here. First of all, my vehicle is a 2007, so I don't have all the hands-free stuff and all the modern technology in my car. I just have my cell phone. And I find the idea that the phone goes into like a cup holder, or I'm going to use it through the radio or whatever, to be the wrong. I don't think this was thought through well, because I've just taken my eyes off the road to deal with that. When I use my phone, I hold the phone between me and the road, and I'm looking at the road and then monkeying with the phone. And I find that to be much safer than the idea that I'm going to look down at my cup phone to make a phone call, or I'm going to be messing with the radio to make a phone call, and I'm looking away from the road. And I just don't think this was thought through real well in terms of safety and keeping your eyes on the road while you're driving. And I wonder what your thoughts are.
Well, I mean, in many people's eyes, it may not be the perfect law, but I do think it's a better law than no law at all. Remember, the primary law just passed last year, and 3 years before that, it was a secondary violation. They had to stop you for something else before you get a ticket for texting and driving, which is super hard to.
I'm not in favor of texting and driving. I'm mostly talking about using your phone here.
Right.
Make a
What?
All right, ask the question and let him answer, please, so we can maintain some order and efficiency, please.
So basically, the law, it is what it is. If you feel that there's a component missing, again, as I mentioned earlier, we only uphold existing laws. The only thing would be for you to address it with your legislator and try to bring it to the next legislative session to change the law or add to the law.
But I'm asking, do you agree that it's not a good idea to take your eyes off the road to look down at your cup holder or whatever?
Of course. I say any distraction that keeps your eyes off of the road, it is a distraction, and I definitely don't recommend it. There's even technology now that silences your cell phone, so you don't even hear it or you don't even see the text. I use it all the time. So I recommend that.
Well, sadly, in my line of work, I'm on the phone all the time, including while I'm driving. So I can't avoid that. It's part of, I'm available 24/7 to whatever happens in my business. So, but I'm just saying, perhaps you, since you're in a better position than I am to say something to somebody, might consider saying something to somebody. I'm going to take your advice and talk to my legislator, but the more people who speak up about this would be better. I just think it's not a good idea to take your eyes off the road if you're dealing with the phone in some lower part of it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Iglesias.
Yeah, I just had a comment, really. I've gotten to know Carlos for several years because I've been the appointee for CTAC on the community traffic safety team for Miami-Dade public schools. I just got to say he's a great resource, and I think the takeaway for all of us should really be about just the resource that he can bring to. We're so about public involvement and communication. I've been able to see some programs come up from that community traffic safety team where there's a problem. He helps identify the resolution of that, whether that's public awareness, whether that's enforcement. If you remember, a few months ago, we had a lady come in and gave public comment about an issue at a school. And I was referring them to this committee and Carlos in particular, because that's a kind of situation where there's an identified problem, but not an identified solution. And he's been a great resource in that. So just from us as a committee, I think it's important for us to know that exists, because he can tie, and I've seen it happen. I know you don't think that you've seen some of the campaigns, but I think it's so subliminal that and so present that you're not aware of it. Even the driver feedback signs on the expressway right now are talking about share the road, and it's part of that messaging. But I've been watching it because I've seen it. I do have one question for Carlos. I know that we just had a survey go out, like a call for ideas. How can we, as a committee or public, get you a call for ideas, something that they would think needs to be next on the agenda on a public awareness campaign or a problem? That's the end of my comments. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Well, first of all, thank you, Danny, for your words. It's great to hear you again. Can you rephrase that question? The last part, you want to know, based on the survey that you got as a CTST member, if that could be shared publicly? Is that what you're saying?
No. How does the public get a hold of you? To the same idea, like that was a call for ideas of what we think should be the next campaign. How does this committee or the public in general, that some of the issues addressed tonight, how do they get that to you so that we can start working towards a campaign?
Okay, great. Well, sir, I mean, it helps the fact that you guys are already a committee, and you can approach me directly or through your chair or through Paul Chance. Any ideas? I mean, Paul and I are in constant communication. We work a lot together, and also through Elizabeth Rockwell, the communications director. You guys can get in touch with me. Any ideas that you have as individually or as a committee, you can send it to me, because we do field individual and collective group requests. In my office, we get constant calls, whether it is from the CTST or from just the general public, whether it's an engineering improvement request or something to tackle on safety-wise, whether it is to visit a school or provide a church or an organization with safety materials. That's what we're here for.
All right. Well, thank you. This item took over an hour, so it must have been very hot stuff. Thank you, Carlos, for your presentation and for your cooperation in responding to all of these issues. Obviously, it's the hot stuff. So thank the requesters for bringing the item forward. Obviously, it was of interest to everyone. So thank you, Ms. Wright, and thank you, Ms. Shine. So this item.
I'm sorry, through the chair, just want to make a quick comment. Thank you, Carlos, for the presentation. I do want to let everybody know, as CTAC members and beyond, we do send out a TPO newsletter every Monday, and everybody all of the board members are part of that distribution. And that information that Carlos is talking about is in the newsletter every Monday whenever they do the campaign. So those PSAs are embedded in the newsletter, the TPO newsletter that everybody receives. So please, when you get those newsletters, take a look through them, go all the way down to the bottom, and to make sure and take a look at those newsletters, and then you will see some of the campaigns that are because we work together as a unit, and like Carlos said, we're one of the partners with the campaign, and we try to get the word out as much as possible to all our citizens, as many as possible. So thank you again, Carlos. Great presentation. That was it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you all. And we're going to move on to the next item, item number 8. And this item will require a CTAC resolution. So I would respectfully request Mr. Fishman to take very careful note of what's going on with this item and stand by for preparing the item resolution at the end of the presentation and the Q&A, bearing in mind, Mr. Fishman, that you don't necessarily have to be the mover unless you want to for the motion. So with that said, after Mr. Fishman proposes the language for the resolution, I will seek a mover and a seconder, and then we'll do roll call voting on this particular item after all of those activities. So with that said, I'm going to introduce the item, which is the FY 2026 Miami-Dade TPO program priorities, and the presenter is Mr. Christopher Rosenberg. So Christopher, if you're there, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. Good to see you all again. I was here last month presenting to our transportation improvement program, so I'm happy to be back in front of the committee to present our list of program priorities. We are now adopted for our new TIP, so I wanted to share that with the committee before I go into my presentation. So I thank CTAC for recommending approval of the TIP to our board. They did successfully adopt the full TIP at our May TPO governing board meeting. So with that background, this is the next step in our annual cycle. As soon as we support the TIP and submit it to our DOT and federal partners, we immediately start cycle.
Hold on a second there. Ivan, we're having some audio problems. Is that something you can fix?
Thank you, Dr. Carnegie, Mr. Chair. I believe Chris may be having some connectivity issues. I'm not sure, Chris, if you're able to move locations or if you're using wireless internet, get closer to the router.
Are you able to hear me okay now?
Fantastic.
Okay. Sorry about that. So I just wanted to transition. We are now in the first step of our process, beginning our new cycle of developing our inventory for our TIP cycle. So today's item is the annual list of program priorities, which we will be bringing to the TPO governing board on June 18th for their recommendation and approval. So I will start my presentation. Please, next slide. So what we're going to be walking through, and I'll try to get through this very quickly, is giving a little bit of background on the list of priority projects, a description of how we organized the list this year. We did things a little bit differently, and a fiscal summary of what is included in our draft list. And then if we have a recommendation to move forward, I will also have the list that I've shared with all members of the committee. We can review that if the committee so desires. Next slide. So the list of program priorities is a statutory requirement. It is procedural in its relationship to the Transportation Improvement Program. As I mentioned, we are now adopted with our new TIP. So what we're doing now is we are requesting essentially a new 5th year of funding to go from our long-range transportation plan into our new TIP. So basically, this is the bridge that connects the long-range transportation plan and the transportation improvement program, all of which you have seen in previous presentations. So this is the administrative connection point between those two documents. Next slide. So one of the things that the TPO does is we always submit this list early, and that is a very useful practice. Statutorily, we have to submit this list of projects to the department by October 1st. However, as you realize, we are in June and we are moving quickly so that we can get it to the department early, as we do every year. One of the things that this does is it allows FDOT sufficient time to address our funding needs and to maximize their ability to find funding and fund as many projects as possible. So we found this to be a very helpful practice in getting as many projects funded as possible. Next slide. So the list of program priorities of our TPO is a part of incorporating projects into the TIP. And as I mentioned, this is the connection point from the long-range transportation plan, which brings projects from planning period 2 into the initial first planning period of the LRTP, which is our TIP. So I just wanted to kind of draw the connections for the committee members on how these documents all work intertwined. Next slide. So one of the things that we do, and this is, primarily driven by TPO staff in doing the coordination efforts, but we do work very, very closely with all of our transportation partners. So when we are soliciting ideas for projects, we primarily work through our Transportation Improvement Program Development Committee, which is membership includes agencies all throughout Miami-Dade County. We also solicited projects through the Transportation Planning Technical Advisory Committee, and we directly submitted requests for projects to all 34 municipalities. This year, what we did was we put together a matrix with categories, and we asked all of those agencies to provide us their top priorities. We then took those priorities, ensured that they were consistent with the long-range transportation plan and the vision of the TPO governing board, and then organized them into the list that we have submitted to this committee and we will be bringing to the board. Next slide. So after we compile the projects, review for consistency with the long-range transportation plan, we then bring it to the committee. So we are now presenting to CTAC. We will be bringing it to TPC, and then we will be bringing it, as I mentioned before, to the TPO governing board on June 18th for adoption. Once the list is approved by the TPO governing board, we immediately submit it to FDOT so that they can begin their process in assessing their revenues. I've mentioned this in previous presentations to this committee. I think that we're all aware COVID-19 impacts are something that is going to play a role in the way that the department addresses our funding request this year. We've already received communication from FDOT that they are expecting about a 30% revenue reduction in the state sales tax. And that is going to be impacting not only the first year of their budget, but it will have a rolling impact on all future years. So full disclosure to this committee, we are anticipating some funding constriction, and we will see how they are able to respond to this list. Next slide. So this year, what we did was we developed the list in a modal organization. I think that this committee has been essential in pointing out that we need to do more in our multimodal efforts. So the TPO governing board has been very clear that the SMART plan and transit supportive projects are the #1 priority for our community. But I went ahead and made sure that this year we also put a very strong focus on complete streets and bicycle pedestrian projects. So I think if you all have had a chance to look at the list, you'll notice that there is a much more robust section for the first last mile connections for trails, connections to the transit ways, and bicycle pedestrian facilities in this request for funding to the department. We also, of course, always, as tradition, we include the roadway capacity projects that we need in our community for movement of the vehicles. And also this year we included transportation technology projects and TSM&O for signal improvements. Next slide. So this is a project highlight slide. We organized the list based on priorities of the board. So number one priority being SMART, we put in a funding request for right-of-way for the North Corridor. The Florida Department of Transportation is the lead on that PD&E, and they have already developed an estimate for what the right-of-way acquisition costs will be to develop the North Corridor with their recommended locally preferred alternative, which our board has adopted. So this list of program priorities is the first formal document in which we are requesting funding to initiate the right-of-way acquisition so that we can begin the North Corridor. We also have our Bus Express Rapid Transit network, and we've put in multiple requests for route operations to the department. And much smaller in value, but equally important, is our SMART Plan demonstration projects. We have 8 new project requests this year that we anticipate will be funded by the department through their Service Development Grant Program. Our second group of projects is our mobility projects, and this is what I called the attention to this committee on in my last comments. We expanded our Complete Streets initiative and put in a much more robust list of projects this year. As always, we have our Safe Routes to School projects. This year, Miami-Dade County and the school board identified 7 school locations that we anticipate will be funded. In our Complete Streets program, we included all of those first last mile connections and trail projects. The Transportation Alternatives program, this year we have 10 new projects that will be funded by the department. We listed those in our formal request to the department. And we also have some other multimodal improvements, not necessarily connected to the SMART Plan, but also important and transit supportive, including the Coral Gables trolley and the Miami Beach transit line on the 17th. Last but not least is the roadway capacity project. Our largest request in this category is the Golden Glades interchange reconstruction. As I'm sure this committee is aware, that project was previously fully funded in the previous tentative work program from the department. However, they had a utility conflict that caused the department to have to defer this project outside of the 5-year work program. Which was to the disappointment of our board. We've been trying to get that project funded for almost 25 years. We were very excited when it was fully funded, and unfortunately, due to that utility conflict, we lost the project. So we are requesting the department to do what they can to advance that project back into the 5-year window. And in our last section in the roadway, we have our TSM&O and technology improvements. We've included a project for a Miami Beach autonomous vehicle pilot, which we're very excited about, and we'll see how that is responded to. Next slide. So this is a fiscal summary of how our modalities are represented in the list. I thought this was helpful in showing our distribution. Although the mobility unit is numerically the lowest value at 32 million, that is a very large list of projects. Bike trail projects are, typically much less costly than our major capacity and transit projects. So I wanted to point out that we've requested more than we've ever requested before for the bicycle and pedestrian initiatives that we have on this list. The SMART Plan is at the top of that list, which we are continuing to seek funding for. And our roadway projects, the primary consumer of that financial total is the Golden Glades interchange, which is over 333 million of that 500 million. Next slide. So what I ask this committee today is to recommend approval of the list of program priorities. Again, this is statutorily required in order for us to move forward and get this request in front of FDOT as soon as possible so that they have their entire development cycle to address our funding concerns. By no means is this the end of the route of requesting funding for the department, but we need to get it in front of them as soon as possible. I will continue to work with this committee if there are any ideas that pop up after we've already submitted to the department, and we can always continue to work at getting those projects funded however possible. But this action will allow us to initiate the conversation with the department to begin funding projects. Next slide. Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions, and I also have the actual list of program priorities. If this committee would like to go through them, I'd be happy to do so and answer any questions.
Thank you very much for an excellent presentation once again, Chris. And I am not seeing any hands raised, so let me start off seeing that I'm not seeing any hands. You have 7 schools on the safe route for funding. Which schools are those?
Ivan, if you don't mind, could you pull up the list of program priorities, and we can go to the mobility section of the presentation just so that the committee can see those locations. Thank you so much. Yeah, just keep going through. It's about midway. All right, here we are. So this year we have identified through Miami-Dade County Public Works and also the school board, the highest priorities are the Hialeah Gardens Senior High School, Hialeah Gardens Middle School, Booker T. Washington Senior High School, Miami Southridge Senior High, and Homestead Middle. And additionally, the Miami-Dade County Public Works priority projects are North Miami Beach Senior High and John F. Kennedy Middle School. So this is the consolidated list between the 2 agencies that we are going to be presenting to the department. I will let this committee know one of our concerns and one of our board members on the TPO governing board is the chair of the school board, Perla Hantman. We've been noticing a trend in a reduction to this program for federal funding. So over the last 2 years, actually, the TPO has been covering the funding gaps. So we anticipate that this year we're going to experience the same. So the TPO has traditionally covered the shortages in the program so that we can get every single school funded. I anticipate that that will continue to happen, but we have put in several requests to FDOT and to the federal government to make sure that this program remains funded in full.
Okay, and my next question, I don't see any hands, was the transportation alternative. You had 10 projects.
Yes.
What are those? Is that list here as well?
Yes, sir. Ivan, if you could just scroll down a little bit. Okay, right there. So they start just a little bit back. They're kind of split between the 2 pages. So the first is a little bit back, Ivan. It's cut off right at the top. Okay, perfect. The first project is the South Miami Pedestrian Bridge construction. That is $1 million in 2026. The 17th Street Bicycle Lane project, just so that we can draw some parallels here, this is the roadway component for the actual roadway facility. This original request for the application included the transit improvements for the bus lane. However, we received guidance from FHWA that they would only be investing for the roadway component, not the transit element. So Miami Beach actually submitted an application to the TPO to support the transit element as well, which we've included in this list separately under the mobility section, other multimodal improvements. The Caribbean Boulevard Complete Streets project, that is $1 million in 2026. Ludlam Trail, the overpass specifically at 40th Street. We've got a lot of other funding on the Ludlam Trail, but this is a specific location. Miami Lakes put in an application for their Park West bicycle and pedestrian improvements. North Bay Village Island Walk Phase 1. The Miami Shores Village Flagler Trail, Town of Medley Sidewalk Master Plan, and the Bike Safe Elementary School program in Miami-Dade. The Bike Safe Elementary School program in Miami-Dade normally would have gone through the Safe Routes to School application program, but since it's more of an educational, the department has consolidated it within the transportation alternatives so that it has a better chance of getting funded. And last but not least is the Miami Shores ADA ramp improvement. We've been told by the department that all of these projects will be funded. So we're very happy about that. We kind of got a sneak preview at their response on this group.
All right, thank you. You answered my questions. Any other?
I have
Mr. Chair.
Who's that? You need to.
Alan first, and I don't know who else spoke.
I have a question also.
That's my child. Through the chair,
Okay,
my child
so,
and Alan Fishman.
Okay, Mary Shall go first, Mr. Fishman next.
Thank you for the presentation. One of the questions is, it'd be interesting to know moving forward, if we, now that more people are working from home, if we're going to have a linear reduction, like a steep decline in all these, you know, highway trips. And so I wonder whether after the interchange is built, whether we can sort of ease in the highway building and then put more emphasis on the complete streets component. So that's just one question. But I have a specific question regarding South Miami and the pedestrian bridge. It is my understanding that if the pedestrian bridge moves forward, that any kind of trolley service, we've had trolley that's not been efficient, but you know, if we strive to have an efficient trolley, whether the highway, the bridge funding will foreclose any opportunities for trolleys moving forward.
So that's a great question, Muddy Child. But however, the two are completely mutually exclusive when it comes to this application program. The pedestrian overpass, which is applying for funding this cycle through transportation alternatives, is only eligible for, it's an FHWA fund source, which is specifically for roadway improvements and highway. It would not limit the possibility for the city of South Miami to obtain trolley funding, since they are two different federal entities.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer all your questions, Maricha? I thought
it does for now. But I'm just curious moving forward whether, you know, the patterns of car movements will decline by a lot. And so clearly, you know, we're here at a crossroads where we don't know, it does look like, you know, pedestrians and bicyclists and trolleys might be the way of the future.
I guess it's too early for Chris to make any kind of forecast on that. We're still in the pandemic, right, Chris?
Well, Mr. Chair, yes. However, we have received, when I mentioned that FDOT told us that they had a revenue forecast of about 30% reduction, they based that off of traffic movement and gas tax collections. So we haven't seen the long term. I don't think that we yet can extrapolate that impact into the long term. However, they've already addressed about a 30% reduction in movement, which is directly impacting their revenues. So I'd be interesting to, it'd be interesting to see how this is going to play out in the long term. I'm kind of a statistics nerd myself, so I'm very interested to see how that's going to impact our projects. I know that we've already begun conversations through our committees to address this issue, and I think our board's going to be bringing some items to that effect.
So you've seen an initial trend. You've seen an initial trend line, but you can't forecast what that trend line is going to do going forward, right?
Correct. And Mr. Chair, if I may, through the chair, Muddy Child, we also, I almost forgot about this, we also have a South Miami trolley application through our SMART demonstration program in this list of program priorities. So, yeah, when I said they're mutually exclusive, they're both on here.
Oh, okay, thank you. It's news
Yes.
to me.
I thought there was something else you wanted to hear, Marichild. That's why I prompted you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you both. Thank you, Chris, for your response. Thank you, Marichild. We'll go to Mr. Fishman.
I wanted to go ahead and submit a resolution now so that any further conversation could be geared to passing or not passing the resolution, if that's okay with you.
Well, is there anybody else? I don't see anybody else prompting for a question. Well, let's go ahead with the draft resolution, Mr. Fishman, and thank you very much. And like I said, you can or cannot be the mover. It's up to you.
I will proffer the resolution.
Okay.
The resolution is CTAC moves that it accepts and recommends the adoption of the fiscal year 2021-2022 to 2025-26 Miami-Dade TPO list of program priorities as submitted.
All right. And you're the mover, sir?
Yes, I am.
For the record. And the seconder is
I'll second.
Naomi Wright seconds. Mr. Fishman moves, Naomi Wright seconds. So with that, I'll call the question. And all those in favor, Mr. Coordinator will take a roll call vote on that. So you could answer yea or nay to the roll call vote. Mr. Coordinator, please.
Thank you, Chair. Alexander Adams. Maya Child.
Yes.
Alan Fishman.
Yes.
Susan Garsh.
Yes.
Benjamin Johnson.
Hendrick.
Yes, Benjamin Hedrick.
Hendrick. Well, I got Johnson there. I'm sorry. Thank you. Marlon Kelly Sr.
Jasmine Johnson. Jasmine.
You probably missed Jasmine's first name on your list.
Yeah.
And she comes after me.
I have it. Jasmine Johnson.
Yes.
Antonio Reyes.
Yes.
Susan
Marlon Kelly,
Shine.
you missed? You missed Marlon Kelly?
Marlon Kelly said yes, right?
Correct.
Susan Shine.
Yes.
Lee Swerlin. Lee Swerlin. And we trying to unmute
Yes.
him.
I'm sorry, I'm on mute. Yes.
Naomi Wright.
Yes.
Vice Chair Daniel Iglesias.
Yes.
Chairman Dr. Claudius Carnegie.
Absolutely, yes.
All right, item passes.
All right. Well, thank you all for participating in that process. Thank you again, Mr. Fishman, for your due diligence. And Christopher, the item passes. So I hope you're happy with that.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee, for your support. Like I said, if any ideas come to mind throughout the cycle, this is not the end of the road. You can continue to submit those ideas to me, and I will bring them to our TIP Development Committee. Thank you very much.
Right, and keep us posted on getting that money back for the Golden Glades. We had a motion some time ago where we wanted that to be kept in the region. It's unfortunate that we didn't get our wish, so keep us posted on that, please.
Will do, Chair. Thank you.
All right, so moving along, we move to the next item, which is item 9, and that is the second round of public comments. Ivan, let us know if they're in a show of hands so we can deal with that.
At this moment, there are no hands raised, Mr. Chair.
All right, so we'll move on then. Thank you, Ivan. And no public comments for the records. And I have a very brief chair's report, which says.
I'm sorry, through the chair. Ivan, can we see if anybody is on the phone line as well?
Yeah, good point, Mr. Chance. Thank you. I forgot that there's some people out there on telephones.
Yes, I will unmute the attendees right now. If you have a comment, please state your name and then provide your comment.
Excuse me?
Excuse me?
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I think that was a side conversation. I
Right.
don't think there are any public comments at this moment.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Mr. Chance. Very good point. So again, for the record, there are no public comments in round 2. So I'll move to the chair's report, which is very brief, especially in the interest of time. We need to get this wrapped up. I'd like to remind new members to register online for the mandatory sunshine ethics training. By the way, I registered and I'm going to the class on Friday morning. If you have not taken this training course in over 5 years, I would recommend and encourage you to consider retaking it to remain up to date with the Sunshine Law. All members have received an invite to to this ethics training to take place on Friday. We do have 2 members that have not taken the training. Have you, I guess you reminded those 2 members, Mr. Coordinator?
Yes, yes, they know who they are.
All right.
Through the
Okay,
chair,
thank you.
through the chair. With
You're
regard to
recognized.
that, I just recently retook it for another committee, and I think the committee members should know that there are some different things than there were when we took it initially. So you may want to consider taking it again.
And that's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm going back, because I don't think I took it in the last 7 or 8 years. So
Yeah, I was surprised.
Yeah, I sit on another committee as well, so it's worthwhile going back every 5 years, I think, to get a refresher, because in these times and circumstances and crises, there are all kinds of changes. So I do recommend that. Thank you. All right, next item is Mr. Fishman has got something you would like to say about the beach Northeast land use scenario envisioning planning study. Mr. Fishman, you got the floor.
Well, my report is very short. I did go to a meeting not too long ago, but it doesn't seem like they have, if you notice, even on the thing we just approved, they haven't really come to final decisions yet. So they were still talking about looking like it was going to be the people mover going over to Miami Beach, and perhaps a different type of vehicle going to down, Midtown Miami. But really, they didn't, it wasn't a long meeting, and they didn't really break new ground, quite honestly. It was like more of a recap of stuff we've already heard at our own meetings and I brought up before. So unfortunately, I can't say that there's anything groundbreaking that I recall coming up at that meeting.
Okay, just as a general question, what is the sense and consensus, if you will, from the politicians and the residents on the beach as to their expectation of a smart plan implementation over there?
It's very interesting because I don't know that many residents really know about it. I happen to be active in a group of all the presidents of the area that would be affected, to be honest with you, and I've made sure that they're aware of the situation, but they don't really know much. So no one's really going to them and getting their opinion other than when I bring it up. I have a feeling from comments I've received from the presidents of the high-rises in that area and of the whole area that they're not going to be overjoyed with, whatever it is, 20-foot high tracks going right down 5th Street, blocking the views of all the buildings that run along, 5th Street. So I guess at some point they're going to figure it out, and they'll probably not be overjoyed with it. Again, it's still based on the false assumption that people like to walk on Miami Beach in 100-degree heat in hurricane season. So they're still dropping them off on 5th and Washington and requiring you to either walk or take some type of bus trolley, which hasn't been completely figured out. We already know that the city once before said that their trolley system couldn't handle, doing all the passengers. It wasn't set up for something like, drop off, pick up, but they're still working out the details. So that hasn't been resolved yet either. So again, other than the fact that it's looking like the APM type system so that it connects into Brickell and downtown going to the beach, and other than something maybe a little bit different going to Miami, there's not that much outreach actually, from what I could tell, other than yes, they have these meetings, but almost nobody goes to them in terms of the beach. They're usually people from other cities like North Miami or Aventura, and they're usually just staff that are showing up as opposed to just concerned citizens.
So are you implying, Mr. Fishman, that the outreach process needs to be improved to better inform the residents and the politicians? Presumably the politicians should be very well informed, but it sounds like the residents are not. So are you implying that some kind of improvement in the outreach delivery program is necessary? Is that what I'm hearing?
I would say it falls under the category of what makes Naomi, shake and get upset every time this comes up. Like, what are we really doing to reach the basic person down there? If I'm telling you, I'm talking to all the leaders of the area that are just people and they don't know what's going on. Obviously, the politicians know what's going on, but there wasn't really. It was kind of like a shakedown from what I hear. It's like the county came in and said, "This is what you're getting. Take it or leave it." And it's almost like that, at that point, what do they do? So I'm not even sure if they're full-heartedly behind it in a way, because there's certainly nothing publicly that I'm getting. I'm not getting emails from the city telling people about it. And I certainly get an email 2 times a day from the mayor from Miami Beach. And I know, again, the average person, and even the educated average person, doesn't really know what to expect right now.
All right, thank you for that. So I'd recommend, Mr. Coordinator, that the minutes should probably highlight that, based on Mr. Fishman's report, that there needs to be some improvement to the outreach program for the beach transit proposal.
Can I say something?
Who is that? You need to say your name.
I'm Susan. I'm not, I guess, on the video.
The rules are you need to say your name so that I can recognize you. So, because I don't know all the voices.
Well,
so, Susan, go ahead. You're recognized.
No visual anything. So, Alan, can he hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, he can hear you.
Okay. So the person who I get the most, as a beach resident, the person who I get the most information from is Frank Del Vecchio. I don't know. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, and unless something changed, he's been the #1 opponent to anything like this for the last 20 years. So yeah, I know who he is.
Okay, well, he's the person I get most,
Well, he is the #1 opponent to anything like this for the last. He's the one that has killed it consistently over the last 20 years. So I don't know what he's telling you. I'm just saying.
Oh, no. I'm just talking about getting the message out. That's all. As a person who receives the mayor's messages also, twice a week on email, you get a beach mailing, you get a planning committee thing, but there's no, and I'm on WAVNA, I'm on, no, there's no discussion. In other words, all I'm saying is I'm the object of the marketing, and it's not getting to me.
So you're supporting what I said is what you're basically saying.
Correct. Naomi.
And actually, Frank Del Vecchio, unfortunately, this is a public meeting, is not the right person to try to convince people to have this, since, like I said 3 times, he is the #1 opponent of this whole concept for the last 20 years.
And what's Eileen, isn't this the one that Eileen Higgins is interested in?
Is she our commissioner, if that's who you're talking about? She had some interest, but from what I was listening to at the meetings, she was more concerned about her constituency by the Omni than she was for the Miami Beach residents. From any comments that I got from anyone that was presenting information over the last 6 months, the people from the city and the county have always basically, the stuff that she's focused on is the Omni area, which is why they want the transfer station where they want the transfer station.
Right. So she's another person who's pretty consistent in her messaging. She manages to reach us. So that's all I'm talking about is the methodology. I'm not talking about the message. I can see the causeway from I see the ships coming in and out, every morning now. I see the causeway when they're closing it off. I see all of that. So I'm one of those people who would have not necessarily my view impaired, but I'll be able to see it if I'm still alive when they're building it. So I guess I should be somebody who's informed. And what you were talking about is actually the Baywalk area, that's south of 5th. That's who would be impacted by it, not the people along 5th Street, if you're talking about their view. So
no, their view would be impacted because it's going to have to be really high. Don't forget they're building the bridge across 5th Street, and that's going to require the bailing to go up like a roller coaster. Like that's another challenge. It's going to have to go way up like a roller coaster and then come way down, which is why it has to end where it has to end because of the distance. But no, they're going to have to go over the bridge. They can't go under the bridge.
Right. No, I know that.
I think I got it, folks. In the interest of time,
Sorry
you're
about
talking
that.
about, you're talking about better communication, better outreach, and that's the
Yes.
point I think we need to
Yes,
focus
Susan is
on. Get
supporting
that
what
in
I
the
said.
minutes.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so we're getting very careful note of that in the minutes, and hopefully the coordinator will get it to the appropriate TPO decision makers so that we could give some special attention to that. We need to get the information out there so that we're getting good active participation from the residents. Obviously, there's something going on with the politicians if they're not sharing this information with their residents. So as a TPO entity, we need to make sure the information is getting out there before we invest a lot of money in the system, and then there will be a lot of objections down the road. That's not very smart, and we're working with a smart plan here, so we want to be smart. All right. Any other questions or comment on that? Hearing none, the next item on the chair's report is the next CTAC meeting will be held on Wednesday, July 1st. Mr. Coordinator, has any decision been made as to whether or not we're going back to a face-to-face, or is this going to be virtual?
It will be a virtual meeting, Chair.
Okay, all right. I thought I'd heard some noise that the governor was releasing virtual meetings and going to face-to-face meetings. I didn't hear a date on that. That's why I'm asking the question.
Well, there's a possibility, but we fall right in line before that date expires.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir. That's it for the chair's report. Are there any additional questions before I move on to new transportation business? Hearing none on the chair's report, then we're on new transportation business. Any new transportation business, please get my attention by saying your name and what the issue is. All right, hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion for adjournment, and it is by my time 7:27 approaching. Motion for adjournment.
I so move. Alan so moves.
And the chair will second for the first time. Thank you all very much for your participation and for your input and for your cooperation and for your respect. It's all very much appreciated. Thank you all for being here. Please stay safe, healthy, and let's keep navigating our way through these crises. It will get better. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.